The Jacksonville Jaguars are the best at something. What that thing is kicking. Their punter and their kicker combined represent the best in the National Football League. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You tuned in to Locked On Jaguars, and it is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcast. Just make sure you tap into that location to be sure that you don't miss an episode of the big show. That's right. Locked On Jaguars is always here for you each and every day, bringing you the best stories, the best and the biggest stories from the Jacksonville Jaguars. We're back here today doing just that. Once again, I'm Tony Wiggins, and here's where we're going to go today. Moving ahead. Moving ahead to what? I'll tell you what that means moving forward concerning free agents that are still on the board, and if the Jaguars should have any interest. Right smack in the middle. What other positions are the Jags at the top for? I'm going to venture and say wide receiver. They're getting close. We'll talk about where they rank divisionally at each and every spot. But first, we're going to start in the spot where I believe they are at the top of the league, and that is the combination of punter and kicker. Logan Cook, the Pro Bowl punter from the Jacksonville Jaguars that has done a marvelous job. And if you're outside of Jacksonville, you may not know this. Dude's about 6'5", about 235 pounds, and he will thump you. He also has a propensity to stick the ball inside the 5-yard line at big moments, therefore being rewarded with a new contract extension for 4 years by the new staff. The incumbent coach of the special teams, Heath Farwell, is still here. Tony Boselli is in the building in a bigger capacity, and he could probably tell them what film also told them that Logan Cook was a dude worth keeping. Also, Cam Little, the second-year kicker out of Arkansas. Cam Little's a small dude. There was a former professional athlete who was a good friend of mine, a professional football player, played 13 years in the league, who had his son, who is a junior, I believe, at one of the most prestigious schools in the country, standing on the sideline, and they were watching Cam Little. That young man was about the same size as Cam Little, not very big at all, but they are two of the absolute best at their respective positions. And then combine that with Heath Farwell, who was retained by this new staff because special teams has not been a problem in Jacksonville, in my opinion, especially now that they have the kicking game down. Why is this significant? It's significant because this team can't say that they've been the best at anything. If it weren't for teams like Cleveland and maybe the Saints as of late and Carolina, the Jaguars would be right towards the bottom of teams that have done anything significant in the last 6-7 years. So it's important that when they are good at something, we acknowledge it. And the kicking game right now is where we're going to start. For a team that won 4 games, you'll go big deal. I don't care. I do. You don't wait until everything gets good to start being good at everything else. I mean, that would be pretty damn easy to do. I just sit and think about it like this. When you're watching a football game on Sunday, let's just say you're rooting against a team that is always winning. That would be Kansas City, Baltimore, Philadelphia, to a certain degree, Buffalo and Pittsburgh, the 49ers prior to last season. Anytime you get fatigued at watching a team win, there's something that happens that is very, very significant. When another team that you're pulling for, whether that's a good or a bad team, if it's a bad team trying to get an upset, or if it's a really, really good team, and they just might not be on their game, you know what they always manage to do? They always manage to keep it close. And then here comes that kicker that you know that can kick it from a mile away. And as time expires, they find themselves back into the league, celebrating, giving each other high fives, like saying, yeah, it wasn't the greatest game, but we figured it out, right? This is when you have a punter that can place people inside of their own 10-yard line so your defense can go crazy. This is when you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you got 13 seconds to complete 2 passes to get about 60 yards, and somebody's dumb enough to give you 25 on the first play, and then you get about 26, 27 on the next play, and then you call a timeout, and then you run your kicker out there, and everybody in the world knows he's going to make it. Justin Tucker was that guy for Baltimore. He's got his personal issues right now, so he was let go. But he's a Hall of Famer. He's like the GOAT kicker for a reason. You're like, oh, God, here we come. Now, he missed almost a 60-yarder here in Jacksonville a couple of years ago, about by an inch. But still, the thought that your team could be just good enough to hang around or good enough to hold off somebody when they're not at their absolute best, and all you got to do is get across the 46, 47-yard line, and you have a shot at getting that thing nailed right down the middle. What about late in the game when you need your punter to deliver for you, and they do exactly that? What about those tackles that have to be made when it looks like somebody's broken free on either a punt or a kickoff? Yeah, you got it. I'm telling you. It is very, very important when you win. And what this is an exercise this ain't fake it till you make it. This is be good in that area until the rest of the areas catch up. Now, we don't know how much the Jaguars, the rest of those areas have caught up. But I do know right now that the reason why I believe they're the best in the league, and I explain this for you for a second. Do I think Logan Cook is the best punter in the league? He's close. He's top 2 or top 3. And no, I'm not going to sit here and name the other 2 or 3 punters, but I'm sure you can look that up and Google it or whatever, right? In my opinion, he's top 2 or top 3 because he's been put in some bad situations and hasn't been able to be magnified the way that you think a great player would be, because nothing great has really happened for the Jaguars in the last couple of years. And even when something good did happen, it was minimized because, well, the rest of the team had some holes in it. And there were ways to poke holes in the rest of it, even in the coaching staff, right? But when this thing actually gets fixed, the one thing you don't want to have to go fix is finding a kicker. The year that the Jaguars went 9-8 after their 9-8 season, they had a kicker here. I can't remember the dude's name. I should have looked it up, but I didn't, because y'all don't care about that. What you care about is the fact that I'm right. That year after they went 9-8 and went to the playoffs, that next year they came back, they were missing field goals all over the place. The game that Trevor Lawrence got hurt, it was a Monday night game against Cincinnati when he got hurt and Joe Burrow didn't play. Remember that? They missed field goals then, and they lost the game at the end because they made a run and then they couldn't get it close enough because of the field goals. You just can't do it. So Cam Robinson, oh yeah, he ain't kicking no field goals, but Cam Little came in and solidified it. He's a little guy with a big leg, and it feels good to have a dude that he's in his second year, as long as he don't have a sophomore slump. It feels good to know that you have a dude, he kicked that thing with anybody. Remember the year they went to the playoffs? Now, he wasn't here, and people don't understand, when they made that comeback against the Chargers, they almost missed that field goal at the very end of the game as they walked off. That thing curved and hooked and barely got in, man. Shout out to the kicker who that was, too, a couple of years ago. But now that they have their kicking game and their punting game, these are the things that you really don't see how important they are until you need them to be super, super important. That is correct. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to be glad that the Jacksonville Jaguars have the kicking game that they have. We're going to be happy that the Jacksonville Jaguars, when you combine those two, the fact that we have one of the 3 best punters in the league, in my opinion, the fact that he's our own too. He's a dude that can go down there and thump people and make tackles when he has to, and he can pin that ball inside of the 5-yard line. Once these players are given more support by their offense and defense, you'll see just how good they are. And the fact that Cam Little is on a rookie deal makes it even that much more sweeter. I'll talk about the other positions where the Jags are close to the top and where they need to improve. We'll do that over the next 2 segments here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Monarch Money. You need to get ready to take control of your finances, man, because if you ever looked at your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out and online shopping and entertaining, that's my wife, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, and your personal CFO, they'll make you their personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building up that wealth with surprising insights, all in one convenience and easy collaboration. Money management is really, really easy with Monarch Money as your partner. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. First day of minicamp got going today. I'll be on the ground tomorrow and the following day to give you guys a firsthand report of what all happened and what all went on. We can probably hit you with a little bit of that later on too for an early podcast tomorrow. However, today we're talking about the fact that Logan Cook got a contract extension and how significant that is to not only the Jaguars, but to his kicking mate, if you will, in the same room, and special teams coach Heath Farwell. Look, it is huge to me that you don't have any questions about your kicker or your punter coming into this league. You need to this season. You need the least amount of distractions, the least amount of things to take your first year head coach's mind off of the things he needs to be worried about. Liam Cohen is adjusting to offense and defense. And then he even joked with us during OTAs, special teams. He said, man, I heard forever you got to pay attention to special teams, but now I'm actually having to pay attention to special teams, and it's a little bit different. Somebody asked him, and then I followed up and asked him a question at the last day of OTAs about, watching these drills and seeing his offensive guys battle with defensive guys and the defensive guys winning out. Now, this is not foreign to him. Obviously, he's been a coach for a long time. He's seen these battles before. But when you're coaching one side of the ball, you're pushing and coaching your guys, even though you're kind of rooting for everybody out there. You're not even kind of, you are. But you're pushing and coaching your guys to outplay the other guy. And that coach on the other side is pushing his guys to outplay your guys. And that's how this thing goes up. This goes up because of competition. So sometimes, you can get confused saying, okay, well, you want your guy on your side of the ball to do well, but do you want him to do well at the expense of his own teammate? And then you go out there on Sunday and your guy doesn't do as well. And what it does is it exposes to you that him or his teammates aren't as good as you think. And that's why them practicing against each other doesn't translate to the field. Does that sound familiar? So how do you combat that? And how do you get to the point where there's a balance that you can strike? Well, you got to just be good everywhere. So what I'm going to do is this. I've looked at all of the units, and I'm going to tell you how close I think the Jaguars are to having a top unit. I've already said the kicking game and special teams. I think kicking game-wise, they're the top unit. And the reason why they're a top unit what puts them in that category or close to it is Logan Cook. What takes him over the top is you got this little 5'11", 6 foot, 170-pound kicker that has a bazooka in his leg, and it hasn't stopped. I've still seen this dude this offseason still kicking the ball like he's Mark freaking Mosley. By the way, Mark Mosley was the only kicker who ever won an MVP. He won it with Washington. Ironically, they lost 2 one-point games that year during the regular season. They would have been undefeated, and he missed field goals at the end of the regulation for him. So the thing is, like, well, wait a minute. The kicking game is fine, but what about the rest of the team? All right, let's go with quarterback. We'll go with offense first. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, offensive line. I'm going to tell you right now, the offensive line is in the lower 25% until they're not. I got to see these guys together. I can sit here and try to make a guesstimation that they have gotten better. I know Sean Starrett the other day said, look, this is about the deepest unit I've ever been around. And I don't consider that hyperbole. I think what he means is the difference between number 1 and number 10, it ain't that big. Now, the question is, How good is number 1 and how bad is number 10? All right. You want that variance closed up, but you still want competition to be there to the point where you start to get dudes that are going to step up. So with the offensive line, they can be good because of continuity and cohesion, or because they're all kind of alike and they dance in the same rhythm, sort of like the Temptations, or they can just be good because they are just fabulous. They got all of that. Plus these dudes are like alpha good, sort of like Philly, right? They can also be good like Philly, where they can maybe hide one guy if everybody else is really, really good. And then you got all these skill position players. But right now, I would say bottom 25% with an arrow pointing up. They have a lot to prove, a lot with the coaching staff. I think if they get that thing in the top half this year, this season, they'll be headed in the right direction. Let's go ahead, since we're here on offense, and look at tight end. Tight end, bottom 25% until they tell me that they're not, and show me that they're not. I like the optimism of them moving forward. I will still give them an arrow up with that, because I'm leaving room for what I think is going to happen. That's what the arrow up means. The arrow up means development, growing into it, and new scheme. That we got to at some point not think that it was all players and start actually, it wasn't all Trent. It was, y'all told me it was Press and Doug too, right? And it was Ryan Nielsen. I wasn't trying to save Trent's job by pointing this out. If all of those things are bad, then how bad is the GM? You consider the GM probably is the one that hired them or had a whole bunch to do with them being hired. It's on him too. But we're also not going to sit here and blame him for every little thing that happened, especially when on Sunday you saw the incompetence, right? So you sit here and think that with the offensive line and the tight ends, even though I'm putting them in the bottom 25%, which means somewhere between 25 and 32, the arrow's pointing up. If they can get that thing to about halfway, then that means this offense is cooking with grease. Let's go to running back. Bottom 25% until they tell us they're not. Same thing. But now we're giving them some mulligans because they, in my opinion, were held back tremendously, because as soon as they touched the ball, they got hit. Now, from a skill position standpoint, from a skill-wise to what they actually have and what they can actually accomplish and what they can actually do, I'm optimistic. I really am optimistic. And you look no further than Tampa last year with how they were able to get, without having one alpha running back, they were able to get production from all of those guys. All right. Last two positions, and these are the ones that are most important. Quarterback, I'd say they're in the top 50%. I'm not going to do that to Trevor. I'm going to tell you right now, ain't no way Trevor's in the second 16. He's in the first 16. How far up that 16? I'm going to plant Trevor right somewhere between 10 and 12, and I'm trying not to be biased when I do that. I'm not going to sit here and name them all. I'm just telling you, if you want to say he's the top 10, I'll say he's about 10, right? Until he proves otherwise. But that is also with an arrow going up. Trevor Lawrence could very well find himself a top 7 quarterback this year with this new staff. Let's get to it. Wide receiver. Where are they? I'm going to put the wide receivers in the top 75 percentile. I'm going to say the Jaguars wide receiver unit is one. It's somewhere, it ain't number 1, but it's in the top 8 in the National Football League. And yeah, some of this is Travis Hunter, who hasn't proved anything. But a lot of it is Brian Thomas Jr., who I have said is a top 7 wide receiver, and I don't think he's number 7. I'm going to put him there. And because of the way Dyami Brown closed off last season, and then when you add the prospect of Travis Hunter, a dude who was drafted at number 2, which usually constitutes a guy being the number 1 receiver, but then you already have a number 1 in Brian Thomas Jr. This is sort of like the kicking game. That's why I have them so high. What they're doing is they're making an area not just good, they're making it not just great. They hope to make it so superlative to everyone else, or superlative to the teams that line up across them and have to stop them every week. It's going to help Trevor. It's going to help the running back. It's going to help that offensive line. And this is how you get all of these things working together and the tide starts to rise. And all of a sudden, that ship is getting higher and higher. That is exactly what the Jacksonville Jaguars appear to be trying to do on offense, and I applaud them for it. We'll look at the defense and tell you that moving ahead, who can carve their way up. And I think it's those edge rushers. We'll talk about that more in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. Locked On Jaguars rolling along here on this glorious day, first day of mandatory minicamp for the Jaguars. Luckily, we haven't heard any bad things, so nothing bad has come from minicamp so far. We'll report on that tomorrow. I also go out and have boots on the ground tomorrow. Here's my song again, Boots on the Ground. We'll go out and have a report from that tomorrow. We'll get right to it. We ain't gonna hold you back, right? We'll tell you everything that we see and everything that we saw. You did the offense. Logan Cook and Cam Little, in my opinion, are the top tandem in the league when you think of them in totality. We've seen enough from Logan Cook. Well, we've definitely seen enough from him, but we've seen enough from Cam Little for me to say, yeah, that's where I'm going to put him at. There you go. Y'all feel free. Maybe you can go with the Eagles or somebody. Or Dallas does have a real good field goal kicker. I'll give him that. I don't know who the punter is, but I'm telling you right now, I take the Jaguars. Basically, what I'm saying is I take the Jaguars tandem and kick over anybody in the league right now, and I wouldn't bat an eye. I'm getting close to that with those wide receivers too. And I know it's early. Look, I know Philly, they got it, right? The Rams, they're right there, right? Minnesota, right there. And of course, Cincinnati. You can't tell me you're going to go too much further than that. When you talk about Dallas, maybe. I think our guys are better than those dudes. I honestly do. Maybe CD is better than Brian Thomas Jr. in many people's eyes, but I don't think George Pickens is better than Travis Hunter. I don't. I really don't. And I know that's not saying too much because George hasn't necessarily lit it up and Travis is expected to. But that's where we stand. Let's look at the defense real quick. Let's start with the DBs. I'm going to say the DBs are right at the 50%. And the reason why I'm doing that is because of the way that they're constructed. And they put some bodies on that side of the ball. You know, you're talking about 4 people that they've added. A safety in a corner. You could say a corner or slot. Jordan Lewis, Eric Murray. And then in the draft, they went and got 2 safeties in the draft to go ahead and come in here and compete. There's some talk that they may be interested in Jaire Alexander or Jalen Ramsey. I think Jaire Alexander is probably more likely. But even with that, Monteric Brown has had a good camp, and I think the Jaguars are willing to go into camp with the guys that they have. Of course, Tyson Campbell is there. They got enough people that they're committed to. Sometimes you don't have to jump just because something becomes available. Even if that is a little bit better than what you have to think about the cap ramifications. And then you have to think about giving up on a young player possibly for a dude in Jaire Alexander that has missed significant time the last 2 years. So you can't really worry about that. But I'm going to put him right at 50% with a flat line. It's not going up, not going down. This is like, seriously, I really do want to see. The linebacking core, I'm going to put them in the bottom 25% with a big question mark. The question mark is, who is the running mate to Foye Oluokun? What do you get? What does it look like? Where's the depth? I like Jack Kaiser. To me, he's a bonus because even as a 4th-round unproven rookie, at least we have that blue sky, and then he has the leadership ability, and he's looked good. He's moved around really, really well in practice. So they have Ventrell Miller, Devin Lloyd, and, of course, Chad Moon. They're all going to compete for spots. We'll just have to see in this new scheme which one of those guys rises up and which one of them doesn't. I spoke very highly of Ventrell Miller yesterday because, I think those other 2 guys are the bigger 6'3", 200 and some odd pounds. I don't know if Anthony Campanile actually needs that kind of size at linebacker. I think they more want to depend on the ability to diagnose things and to get there fast, and Ventrell Miller does that for me. So right at maybe that 25%, but not going down, not necessarily trending up, but sitting flat in let me see capacity. Let's do the defensive line and let's divide it into 2. Interior defensive line. I'm going to, again, put them in that bottom 25%. just in case. Just in case Eric Armstead kind of plays the way he did last year, which I doubt because they won't be rotating him. I'm going to assume that Devon Hamilton is going to have a better second year off of his illness that he had. And I'm also going to include that Jordan Jefferson will also get a chance to show what he wants to do. All right. Mason Smith is the key to whether or not this thing goes up to getting to about halfway. And overall, the defensive line can be affected if those edge rushers are as good as I think. So in terms of the defensive line, I'll put them in that bottom 25%, but with an arrow going up. What's going to help them is my grade for the edge rushers. I'm putting my edge rushers in the top 75%. And woo, I know y'all are like, man, that's high praise. Well, it's pretty high praise for me for guys that when you add it up, they got about 46 sacks the last 2 years. That's pretty decent, right? That's an average of double-digit sacks for both edge rushers. The thing that they lacked in the past was proven depth. Well, Emmanuel Ogbah has been acquired to help out in that respect. They got some young guys they like, McLeod and guys like that in the draft. Certainly, Yashir Abdullah still is going to be given his shot to show what he can do. And then they go out and actually make a late free agency addition. And, you know, Liam Cohen says, oh, we paid attention to this dude. I mean, the guy that they went and got was someone that they actually played against a lot just this past season when he was with Arizona. I want to make sure I get his name correct. That would be Dennis Gardeck. I saw him at practice. Not a real big guy, maybe 6'2" at best, maybe 6'1.5", 6'2", sort of a tweener. Yeah, 3 sacks last year in one game. And, you know, Liam Cohen pointed that out and said he was a special teams player as well. But don't discount also them bringing back Dawon Smoot. Dawon Smoot is a pro's pro. And he's the kind of guy Trent Baalke would give up on. He is the kind of guy that Liam Cohen and James Gladstone finds absolute value in, and it is to be definitely appreciated that they understand that they're going to need that moving forward. So top 75 percentile. Now, if the ends and the edges play the way I think and the offense plays better, that's going to put the defensive line in a better position where the other team may seem a little bit desperate. And when that team gets a little bit desperate, what seems to happen is you can start dictating how you're going to defend them and how you're going to attack them, therefore making the defensive guys be a little bit more of an advantage. So there you go. Did all of that because Logan Cook got a contract extension, but kickers are important too. So we're going to pay attention to every aspect of this football team as we focus on the offseason as we get ready for training camp. Last 2 days this week will be all about mandatory minicamp. I'll have that for you. I'm going to go brush up on this roster a little bit by watching Locked On NFL Scouting. They make me smarter, even me. And I follow this team each and every day. But Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino are so in tune with the rest of the league. Man, you want to talk about experts, no one is better. So make sure you check out Locked On NFL Scouting and make it your second listen. We'll see you tomorrow here again on Locked On Jaguars. We appreciate you spending the last 28 and a half minutes with us. We'll see you next time.